Welcome to DC Direct. I'm Lionel Donovan. Here in this show, we try to talk about some of the bigger issues, but we want you to weigh in. So please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at TRT World, and reach out to us with the hashtag DC Direct to be a part of the conversation. In today's show, we're talking about food deserts in the U.S. Chris Bradshaw is on a mission to ensure that people living in DC's Ward 7 are getting the chance to eat more healthily. Nearly 80,000 people live in the area, but there are only 2 grocery stores. Chris runs a farm and wants to raise awareness to the problem that local residents here don't have access to the food they need.
On the physical, very grassroots level, it allows us to grow healthy food and co-create something with the community that needs access to healthy food. There's only 2 grocery stores here in Ward 7 for more than 75,000 people. And so that helps us to, start to make a change on the very physical health and show folks that we can accomplish something together. Yes, we want to make a difference on the grassroots on the ground in terms of growing healthy food and getting healthy food out to folks. But we also want to challenge the city to implement more public policy that bridges these gaps.
The issue that Chris is trying to address isn't limited to DC's Ward 7. Millions of people around the country live in communities where access to grocery stores selling fresh produce is difficult. As a result, many people in these communities don't have a healthy diet. Tambra Stevenson serves on DC's Food Policy Council, and she explains the different levels communities fall under when it comes to food choice, or the lack thereof. Can you explain to us exactly what a food desert is?
A food desert, which was initially coined by academics, it was this idea that a community like Anacostia not having full service grocery stores. And so we have one. However, over time, different terms have been used to best describe from food swamps, meaning an area where you actually have access to food, is just not healthy. Third variation, which is food apartheid, which is recognizing the systematic structures at place that creates inequality when it comes to access to healthy food.
There are over 49 million people living in the U.S. without access to fresh food or a grocery store. 16 million of them are children.
In communities that have been, unfortunately, predominantly communities of color, is where we have found food deserts. And not only that, communities that are economically depressed, and recognizing that there are systematic forces at play.
If you control people's food and people's environment, you control them. When you're sitting atop valuable land, when there are profits to be made, people make different decisions, and when people look different than them or have different interests than them, and you're disconnected from real people on the ground, you make decisions that harm folks and aren't connected to what people really need.
And so what that leaves is a community having no access to grocery stores, and if you're in an urban area where green spaces are limited, and you also have a generational gap of people who have grown food, on top of not having access to nutrition education, you now have a situation where it's exacerbated of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, because the food choices that are given are those that are filled with sugar, salt, and fat.
So why are some communities losing out on healthier food choices? Public health nutritionist Jillian Griffith tells us the main reasons the community doesn't have access to better food.
Lack of investment into the neighborhood, lack of resources, so you kind of need companies to come in and invest by putting up a grocery store. So that, is really how it happens.
So how do these big food chains decide where to put their stores?
First of all, there has to be space. There has to be real estate for the grocery store to enter into a neighborhood. But then also you want to take into consideration the income level of the community surrounding your store. So for example, in Ward 7 and 8, this area has the highest poverty rates, lowest income across DC.
So what kind of policies are being put in place to address this issue? And are those policies enough?
Here in DC, there's DC Department of Small Local Business Development has created the Grown in DC Act grant program, which is to help ensure that we're supporting a more local food economy, and that's the goal of even our council of like, how do we support more legislation that sets aside funding, that creates policies in place, incentives to encourage more residents who are entrepreneurial and thinking to be able to take advantage and build the kind of food sovereignty that the communities need.
In the meantime, community organizers like Chris are determined to keep working to ensure the needs of these communities aren't forgotten. So how do farms like this help address food scarcity and the lack of access to fresh foods in neighborhoods like this?
You know, there's that old saying that like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go farther, you go together. And so, you know, this process of building community relationships and taking the steps to do something really powerful and form a response that is co-created and comes from the needs of folks here is really important to us, and that's why I think this project is going to be really impactful as we continue to march forward.
Well, that's all the time we have today in DC Direct, but please be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at TRT World, and use the hashtag DC Direct to let us know what you think should be done about food insecurity in the U.S. Until next time, I'm Lionel Donovan.